How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Comic Book History Today, and today we're going to be going over Matt Fraction's Batman, issue 6. And so this starts out with Bruce and Dr. Zeller wrapped in some shock blankets, and she tries to break the ice by saying, we don't have to talk about it. Because if you guys remember in the last issue, Damian Wayne accidentally revealed himself as Robin after he tried to catch the Oho, which is like a bird-like assassin that was hired to kill Zeller because she's working on this sort of helmet crown thing that will cure insanity or like cure the minds of criminals. So Bruce replies, I think we very much should talk about it, and she says, your parenting decisions are yours, who am I to judge? He replies, that's not what I meant, what you've learned tonight puts you in great danger, and she says, no offense Mr. Wayne, but between Moto Ninjas and the Bird Woman with swords, I'm well past great danger. Who knows I know? Nobody, you, me, and him. That's it. I mean, I assume he'll tell, you know, and she does these mock ears to insinuate Batman because she still hasn't pieced together that Bruce being Robin's dad would probably also mean he's Batman, but oh well, I guess she's got a PhD somehow. He even facepalms about this, which, I mean, come on. So Bruce is just like, for what it's worth, Dr. Zeller, I understand it isn't much, but I'm truly sorry this happened. Good night. And she's just like, what, you're leaving? And he leaves, but he leaves her that expensive-ass cube of titanographene, or however you pronounce it. So when he gets home, Damian is like punching on this punching bag, and his knuckles are plenty bloody. But Bruce storms right in, and he's like, Damian. But Damian cuts him off, saying, I know, father, so save your, and Bruce just punches right through this bag, seemingly shocking Damian a little. But Bruce is heated here whenever he says, no, son, you don't know. Believe it or not, in fact, science has yet to conceive of a device so sophisticated to calculate the massive sum of things that you don't know. So smarten up before you get someone killed. And for just a panel here, we see something interesting. We see Alfred come up, and this is kind of unique because Alfred is gone, and so that's something I think Matt Fraction is building here that Batman is struggling with. But right now, he's struggling in a very unique way because Alfred would be that voice in Bruce's ear telling him when he's crossing certain lines as Bruce and becoming too much of Batman in his real life. So right now, we're kind of in the build-up of that where we see Bruce struggling with the death of Alfred by ignoring it, and by silencing it, or by shutting away and distancing himself from how he feels about the death of Alfred. But moving on, we pick up with some of the families that had recently met with the Minotaur, and when they did, in order to further their allegiance and sort of show the power that the Minotaur had over the different members, including the Penguin, they executed a member of each family, seemingly close relatives too. But one of the families, I believe it's pronounced Tazuki, said he gets a call, and he says it's a bad time. But the man on the other end is not the kind of guy that you want to tell that to, because Hugo Strange just starts lashing out, and as he's the one who put a hit on Zeller, he now sees all over the news that they failed. So Tazuki says, like, our terms make it clear that hand of God interventions, but Hugo just cuts in, and I mean, he's not having it because he's not going to deal with these insurance clauses or whatever as to why this didn't work. And Hugo just starts, like, he keeps freaking out, and he says, you think it was the hand of God that scattered a little Tokyo alley with the bodies of your morons on motorbikes. No, Tazuki, tonight, Hugo Strange will show you the only hand of God in Gotham City is mine. And we see these giant monster men that are just standing behind Hugo. He's typically known for making them, but they're just standing behind him menacingly. And so we cut over to this kid, Houston Gray, and Jack Dean. And Jack Dean is sort of this drunkard reporter, but he's bringing the kid to Harvey Bullock, who is, aside from Jim Gordon, one of the last good officers in Gotham. And the reason that they're here is because the kid has some footage of Vandal Savage planting evidence on the scene of a crime. Specifically, the crime scene where the shooting took place that Batman and another police officer were involved in. So basically the whole event that they're using to pin Batman as a bad guy. But Dean asks Harvey, did we get any clean DAs these days? Will it hold up in court? And Harvey's just like, not in this town, and even informs them that the cop that was shot on the scene referencing the shooting is strangled and dead, seemingly. So we know that Vandal Savage did that, but Harvey just says, watch your back, fellas, basically telling them everything they need to know. This game is rigged. So it seems that Hugo decided to take his anger out directly on Tezuki, because we see him at one of his CEI hubs that a bunch of these big monsters are just tearing through the place. And there's this secretary who's sitting under a desk, and she's got her fingers pointed up, similar to how Dr. Zeller did in the beginning. And she's just repeating Batman over and over again. Batman, Batman, Batman. And right as one of them flips the desk over and lets out this like blah, Batman sends in his bat reel, which is this little grappling gun that we get a little stat look of off to the side, and it goes right through the wall, wrapping around this big monster and pulling him right back through the wall. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but these monsters look a lot like the ones from the Arkham Asylum games. If you ever played those, the ones that Joker was creating with the mix of Titan and everything like that. It could just be because I play those games a lot, but I personally see a lot of similarities between the two. Anyway, Batman takes them down and he reveals himself to the secretary and he says, "Evening, ma'am. You're safe now. Are you all right?" And what she says here is very telling of how the public views Batman right now, because she says, "I knew you could hear me. I knew you'd come help. That's why I don't ever say your name out loud. Big bat ears of yours, I knew they could hear every damn thing in this town." And at first he goes to correct her and be like, "Oh, well, they don't actually do that." But then he sees what's happening here, because he says, "Yes, ma'am, I heard you." And he directs her away from the fire while he goes in to fight the rest of the monsters. But basically what we saw there was that the city views Batman as sort of more than human, as sort of a legend, which I think is the best aspect of Batman, or at least the point that all Batman should want to reach. Because if you're more than human, and if you're more than just a man in a suit, you've become a symbol. You've become something that the city can get behind. So I just think that that's the best way that a Batman can meet his goal. But anyway, he tears through these monsters at this facility, and then Vandal's police just opens fire on this building, because they totally do not care about the safety of people. They just want to kill Batman. And so Batman grapples away, and he calls in the Batmobile, which just plows right through these guys, and he burns out of there, leaving them burnt on catching him once again. And so when he gets back to the Batcave under Pennyworth Mansion, he's approached by Tim Drake, and some people loved this decision, some hated it like a lot. I personally didn't mind this choice, but Tim comes down and he says, "I'm sorry I wasn't on patrol too, we need to talk. You know, sometimes, nights on patrol up on the rooftops, I'd see some pair of people walking, and sometimes I could tell they were just more than that. They were a couple. They fit. I could see it even from all the way up there. Can you imagine? A love you can see from the rooftops. And now I think I have that with Bernard, and lying to him about what we do, I think I need a break from this. From us." So he's walking away from being Robin, but the way that Bruce responds may or may not be the way that you'd expect, because he says, "What else have we been fighting for if not that? Tim Drake, you're the bravest soul I've ever known. You can always come back, but I hope you never have to." And Tim brings him right into a hug. Bruce says he's not much of a hugger, but Tim's just like, "Shut up and give me a hug, you big baby." And it's a really touching moment that we see. But next, we see Damian's reaction. And so Damian's kind of sitting behind this door pouting, presumably because he just got bat-dadded to oblivion. And when Tim calls out to him, he says, "I don't have anything to say to you, quitter." And Tim says, "Kinda had a feeling you heard all that." And Damian's like, "Of course I did. I hear everything. At least now I won't have to hear that god-awful motorcycle," which I thought was funny. And Tim says, "I'm not leaving town or anything. We can hang out," but Damian just cuts him off and says, "Why would I want to spend time with a deserter like you?" So he's feeling betrayed. But Tim says, "The world is so much bigger than the Batcave, Damian. I know it sounds impossible to believe, but it's true. I'm only now starting to figure that out, and I hope one day you will too." And so there's this little detail that I think some people missed, and it comes in because we see that Damian has thrown away an acceptance letter to some school in Gotham. Now, that means that he got in. He threw away the opportunity to leave the Batcave, and now he presumably feels betrayed by Tim for leaving him in the Batcave. So, hot take, but I think that Damian Wayne is the best successor to Bruce. I think that if ever there was a good person to take up the mantle and to take on the future of Batman, it would be Damian Wayne. And I think that even as a Robin, he's better. But fundamentally, I think that this change with Tim's character is super important. I think that this shift is a good shift in the direction of getting him out of the suit and getting him more fleshed out and maybe on the way to being his own standalone character a little bit more, whereas also trying to shuffle Damian in as a Robin. And I think that both of those things could be cool, but that's just my opinion on it, you know what I mean? I'm excited to see what Matt Fraction does with Damian. I'm excited to see what the direction that they go with Tim. But moving on, we get the final big twist of this comic as we go back to Dr. Zeller talking to some figure in her Arkham Tower lab. And their conversation goes back and forth, but we don't see who this voice is, as it says, "How did it go, Doctor?" And so she says, "So remind me, Patient Pen, who's the doctor and who's the patient here?" But the voice says, "I don't mean to pry. We speak so often it's easy for me to slip into informality." Now, with this level of manipulation on a doctor, you can absolutely guess who this is pretty quickly. But anyway, they go on, they keep discussing her evening, and she says how she met Bruce's son. The voice says that that's interesting, and she says that they didn't really speak, but all the while, she's been tinkering with her crown that's supposed to help cure insanity. And she flips the script a little, asking if this patient was able to get in contact with his friend. And the patient says, "Oh yes, doctor, I did manage to reach out. I haven't heard back, but it's only a matter of time. After all, he's my very best friend." And we see that in this weird, scary vat, it's the Joker, and he's looking a lot worse for wear. I mean, it's a pretty interesting idea, it's a pretty interesting take on the character. Do you guys think that this crown is gonna work? Or do you think that he's still gonna be just as crazy as always? Let me know in the comments. Also, did you expect that Dr. Zeller would be working with him? I don't know. There's a lot to talk about in this issue, geez. So be sure to leave some comments down below talking about it, and I'll get back to them. And yeah, stick around for more comic book based content. Have a good one. See ya.